I have to say, this house has come together quite nicely after that first fire.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing what a little time travel can do.
Mm-hmm. Well, here we are in whatever vacuum this is deposited into, doing We're Not Pros once again.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to escape, but in the meantime we're staving off the oncoming madness by doing more episodes for you lovely, lovely people. And at the end at the end of this, I'm hopefully going to figure out what our temporal coordinates are so you can send a rescue party. It's not Plato's cave.
No. We are currently is. So Schrodinger's don't need to worry about us, at least for the time being. All right, so we want to talk today about game peripherals and accessories. When we first discussed the idea, the thing that popped in my head is like the guitar from Guitar Hero or the dance pad for DDR. Those are peripherals in the sense that they are means to interact with the game, but that's not exactly what we're going to do today. Matt, what are we going to do today?
Basically, things that relate to the game, but are not necessarily the game. There's, once upon a time you would sell a game, that was it, and maybe there'd be a strategy guide for it. But culture has expanded rapidly in all directions, and now you can have a game come out, and then even before the game is here, you can buy the entire action figure set. Mm-hmm. And in the process of buying the action figure set, it comes with unlocked codes for in-game cosmetic items and stuff like that. It really has gotten carried away where a video game is no longer a standalone entity. There's all these things built around it. Mm-hmm. Like the Warcraft movie.
You're not excited?
God, no!
I would have thought a different direction with it myself, but I'll give it a shot. Blizzard has given me enough good memories in my life that I'm willing to approach things with, at the very least, a neutral standpoint.
As well, kudos to you on that. We're not necessarily talking about specifically the Warcraft movie, so we should be careful how long we go on to that.
Yeah. All right. Well, going backwards, at least in time for me, I mean, the thing that is, I guess, the most on my mind would have to have been the amiibos, which we've talked about before, so we don't need to go too deeply into them. But the idea is solid. It's a figurine that you plug into one game initially, but then if other developers want to utilize those same figurines for other bonuses, it's like DLC that you get before you even knew you were going to get it. It's just like, this works with my Link amiibo. Luckily, you still have it. And you plug it in, and you get a new weapon. And it's like, cool, okay, great. Yeah, it's a harmless addition that just makes you feel like the company gives you a little bit more of a shit for something that you were nice enough to give a shit about by buying the figurine in the first place. Obviously, still a profitable venture. Obviously, you still need to make money off of it. We're not pros, but we're definitely not idiots. I mean, it's fine. We're all on board with it. In fact, the major complaint has been inaccessibility. People can't get the ones that they want, and that is juvenile in one regard, but there you have it.
I think part of it is they should be more of an accessory and less of a collector's item. It shouldn't be, here's one that's going to be on the market that's never going to appear again. I mean, you hope Smash Brothers is going to survive this entire console generation. So you'd think those amiibos would be something they'd want to maybe do occasional reprints.
It is very surprising that they're not. It's very surprising.
Yeah,
it's the demand is up here, the supply is down here, and
the price of oil is low, so plastic is cheap.
Unless it's a deliberate maintaining of certain rarities, which is something you see in like a collectible card game. Where
but this isn't supposed to be collectibles, is it?
It's collectible in the sense that you can get a whole bunch and put them on a shelf somewhere. Mm. I was like really, really taken aback by the backlash for it. It never really bothered me that I couldn't get the one that I wanted to because I'm used to hunting for things. I'm used to looking online and trying to grab something. And yeah, I was a little upset when I saw the Wii Fit Trainer amiibo, one that I really want to get. It was like $40 at A&C Games. I'm like, well, I've already said it, but it's like, if I buy it now and then they print out a whole bunch and the value decreases, it's not fair.
Well, it is, I think, a very valid argument to look at a whole crap ton of Luigi ones that aren't moving and how cheap they're damn going, and then think, I want a Greninja, why is Greninja so... And I also think when we're talking about this, I think we're very much talking about Smash Brothers, because Smash Brothers is going to be the game that one would hope would stick around for a very long time.
Yeah.
If they're going to do a new Super Mario Brothers, and it comes with the coin block head Mario amiibo, it's not like that's going to stick around too much. There's going to be another Smash Brothers. It's okay to let that one go rare because this game kind of has a shelf life-ish.
You will see support for all of the games, but that can become more difficult the more than that come out. But I'm done talking about that. Matt, move on to the next accessory that you want to talk about.
Okay, well, actually, I want to talk about art books.
Okay.
It's not necessarily an accessory, but again, it's part of the whole peripheral universe. Like
I have a few of those. I got one when I pre-ordered Tales of Symphonia on the GameCube, which was a pre-order reward. I wouldn't have gotten it if I didn't do the pre-ordering. And during that generation, pre-ordering was worthwhile because you did get something physical. And now at that time, I was still trying to practice art on my own. And I put that aside because you really only need to be good at so many things in life. But I enjoy art. And I like flipping through the pages and seeing the work done. Art is just a thing that makes you feel better to look at. So I was really glad that I got it.
Yeah, so I have a couple art books. I'm not really trying to draw or anything, but I still appreciate good art. And it's still very nice to look at a lot of these things. I have the Darksiders art book. I'm aware that game was somewhat controversial for various reasons, but I don't think anyone hated the art direction in that game.
No.
Like, that was like the universally agreed, oh my god, wow.
Yeah.
Now, it was really interesting looking at the various pages because they went through, like, here's the initial design for this place. We kind of scrapped that. Here's the initial design. We kind of built on this. We realized it's the wrong direction. So, like,
the thought process is really great to see.
Yeah, and you could see, like, the prototyping for all the weapons in it and things like that. I remember it was really funny because they didn't really have War properly designed at a certain stage. Like, he was actually one of the like, they were focusing more on the environment and all the things you interacted with. War was one of the last things they finished designing, like the main character, which really is a testament to the world building that company was good at. But it was funny because they had a stand-in War because they needed somebody for measuring scale, and this one was entirely in sci-fi power armor. So it was just this funny thing of it. He looked kind of out of place, but they needed some, a war-sized guy to do scale and show off things, and it was just funny thinking that they had this whole guy there. And it would have been really interesting if down the line they had DLC for here's the sci-fi outfit from concept art.
A War just starts to transcend time and space, and then he shows up to that same universe in the future, and he's like, all right, I can use my power suit. This is going to be good. This is going to be good.
That was just fun. And there's a few other art books I've seen. Not all of them are directly related to video gaming. One of them is... I'm trying to remember his name, but he was an artist who basically went through all these history books or all the things that inspired him, and he drew up famous pirates, like his take on Alibaba from Aladdin, and just all these fantasy myths and gods and things like that drawn in that style.
I mean, the gist of that one is that you're less you care less about the specific subject and more about how an artist will interpret different subjects, how it runs through that artist's filter. But that's... Yeah, I'm not talking about any product in specific, but it's still a great thing.
There's also sort of a bit of annoyance because, I don't have an Xbox. I'm never going to buy an Xbox, and quite frankly, like, Halo 1 on the PC is still being played by people today. When they shut down the official servers, they opened up fan servers. Bungie and Microsoft, this is the dedication that the PC community has to Halo 1. Mm-hmm. Bring it back. And yes, I know there's this whole fucking beta test going on in Russia. Taking too long. Bring it over here. Let us beta test it. We're kind of used to that at this point. But, the art direction for that game is also pretty interesting. But one of the annoyances is that the art books are sealed because they have codes in them that you can use to unlock things in-game. In fact, the Mass Effect 3 art book also had a code that let you unlock things in-game. And this sort of, in my opinion, kind of muddying it a bit. Like, are you buying it because you like the art direction, and you like the art, or you just want the in-game unlockable?
Yeah.
Which in some cases, I think in the case of the Mass Effect 3 one, someone in the comment section may correct me on this, but in the case of the Mass Effect 3 one, you actually got an item that affected gameplay. It wasn't a cosmetic thing. So now you can buy the art book to get an item in-game that affects gameplay.
Yeah.
Which I think we're kind of losing the point of it here now, or we're kind of, again, muddying it a lot.
If that, however, is like the first time a younger player, for example, even gets their hands on an art book, then there's a chance that that will have a positive effect throughout his or her life, to then appreciate other art books. Maybe the code was just that first, it was the bait that got you caught on the hook, and then you get reeled in, and now you want to collect art books.
If if it's 100% cosmetic, I would sort of agree with you.
But if it was gameplay impacting in a single player, I still wouldn't care. Multiplayer, then yeah, I'm gonna have an issue with that.
Well, like cosmetics have never really been an issue. Like in terms of pre-ordering or cash shop, if it's purely cosmetic, then it's not really a bad thing. I mean, there was a free-to-play game where the outfits were very blandly designed, and then the DLC outfits were, oh my god, the frills. But thankfully, we as a community have bashed enough companies that that's not really a common practice anymore. Like it's, and then like common, like let's go back to Dota 2, the game we keep love to mention. Like the default outfits for everybody in that game are amazing. And some of the cosmetics are really cool, but a vanilla version of that character still looks really damn well designed.
Yeah, and there are guidelines to keep the custom designs as close to that character's silhouette as possible. So that way, even if the character is wearing something different, there's enough understanding that a player who maybe has never even seen that outfit before will still know who it is when it shows up with a weapon and is about to kill you.
Yeah, you'll never see a blue dragon knight.
No, exactly. It has the color is the core of the character, and I thought that was a very, very smart way to make sure that you always know who it is that's coming after you.
And I
mean, you're not an idiot. He picked it at the beginning of the match.
Yeah, that's actually something that's also sort of annoyed me a lot about League of Legends Heroes of the Storm. Like just all those other ones. It's like, hey, this character now has reindeer antlers. But yeah, we are starting to spiral off of it.
Yeah.
But
it's it's world breaking a little bit.
Yeah, it's world. Yeah, exactly. Like Heroes of the Storm is going to do a festive Sylvanas. She's the Banshee Queen. She's an undead elf.
Which would be hysterical if that's how they play it, where she's completely miserable, but they still dress her up with a hat anyways. My life is misery. What do you want? What do you want for? No,
I doubt they do that. But anyway, so yeah, art book's the big one. And because I appreciate art.
Yeah. Game promotional websites. Not something that I really do anymore because it's just
most of them are just Facebook pages now.
Yeah, I mean, and when the last time that I interacted with a website for a game, it was for BioShock Infinite. And it was this fun little flash puzzle where you would have a bunch of different gears and you had to put them on a grid, and then the gears had to work properly, and if they worked properly, you moved on to the next level. And there were some unlockables that you would get for in-game, which is why I did it. Pretty sure I wouldn't have used that. I mean, it was fun, but it wasn't like the most fun thing that I could do at that time. So the fact that there was an unlock for my own personal gameplay experience, that was enough to entice me to spend some time and be a little bit more affected by the anticipation for the game. It was fine, but I haven't seen very many of those because I haven't sought them out. But I can certainly see the benefit for people who are really excited about something and want to log on to a site that is helping them quell their excitement between the time that they hear about the game they want to get and then the time that they actually get to play in the game, and then afterwards too, if the website continues to be updated. But usually the promo websites are basically done once the game comes out.
Well, I'm not quite sure about promo websites anymore, but I can definitely say that apps and peripherals are still around. Let's look at Fallout Shelter. Hey, we've announced Fallout 4, and I know you all are really waiting in anticipation, so here's Fallout Shelter, a free-to-play game with a cash shop that takes place in the Fallout universe, and that game was more popular than developers even realized. I think the microtransaction that were outselling Candy Crush for a few days. Take that!
Yeah.
And
any thoughts as to why it was so popular?
Well, this has been said by a couple of people, but I think the biggest popularity is that it's a single player game. Most of these free to play games are these multiplayer things where one person puts $1,000 into it and wrecks everyone's fortresses or wrecks everyone's whatever things or has the best options, the prettiest, whatever. Fallout Shelter was entirely single player, so if you didn't spend any money, it's not like you were punished by another character who came by with $500 and trampled your forces. That was your personal choice. And in fact, I don't own it, but I played it on someone else's device. It is in fact the most fun when you don't spend a cent because it becomes really challenging. And that game, again, was designed just to hold people over, and even Bethesda's admitted, holy shit, we didn't realize it would take off like this. And it comes down to the fact that it isn't trying to put you into a position where you're spending money. Whether or not you spend money is entirely on your own conscience. Mm-hmm. Just go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I find that with these games is the money doesn't give you like a combat advantage, but it improves your efficiency, so you can just get things done faster, which does turn into an advantage because you have more opportunity to do things. I'm talking about Clash of Clans here, but...
Yeah, well, I mean, just thinking from a StarCraft 2 standpoint, if StarCraft 2 was free to play and you could pay something to harvest minerals faster, yeah, you're going to win.
Yeah. Oh man, I should have looked this up, but imagine if EVE Online is doing something like that, where when you're not online, you can monitor your ship from an app, and it'll collect your resources for you while you're away. So when you log back on, it's like you never left. You just had this smaller version of it to take with you whenever you happen to be around a Wi-Fi hotspot or you just had a lot of data.
Well, I do know that in EVE Online you can apparently set skills to train while you're gone, so you still get experience. But the whole idea of using an app to promote can also be used for evil! EA was really fucking over-promoting Mass Effect 3, and one of the things it did is it would try to sell you an app for a game, and you could complete the game, and you would get in-game bonuses, or you get like little items or such to help you in the game. And this basically means pay us more money for this stupid time waster that then makes the game easier. And that was just getting really silly at that point. And I don't think they're the only people to do it, but that's definitely like the biggest example. That Mass Effect 3 was just, a mess left, right, and center, but that's one of the bigger ones. And, of course, let's not forget, day one paid DLC that affects the fucking plot. I mean, they literally... They tried to sell you something involving a character from a race of aliens that basically were around before all the race of aliens that are currently around are, and essentially has all the goddamn answers for all the goddamn questions you've had about the background lore. Imagine if you couldn't collect any audio tapes from one of the factions in Bioshock Infinite. Did they have audio tapes?
Yeah.
Okay, well imagine if one entire faction, you couldn't collect audio tapes or any of their stuff unless you bought a DLC package. Wouldn't that piss you off?
I guess. I feel like with this lore character, it sounds integral to the plot, but it also sounds like the plot would have been able to resolve itself anyways. That the character was there for players who wanted to achieve a deeper understanding of the Mass Effect universe. Where I would find the criticism is people have played 3 games. They are clearly invested in it. It's a little unfair to continue keeping a lot of answers from players for an additional price. It's like either you leave it for good, an unanswerable question, because you can do that. You can maintain mystery in your game series. Not everything has to be answered. If you answer every single possible question, then people can no longer use their imagination, and then you actually disconnect the player from the game because now they told you everything. So I would have said,
oh god, imagine if we got all the answers to the Five Nights at Freddy's lore.
It's more fun to hypothesize. That's what gets people talking about it, which I will touch on in a second, not Five Nights specifically, but anyways. Yeah, like, it would do one of two things. Either make sure that everyone gets to hear this, and knowing that, how will that affect the game design, or don't show it, or just leave it. It's not the most fair thing to make DLC out of. Would I have said it's essential? No. So we're talking about communities now. We're talking about, like, for me with the website thing. Back when like Flash was the software to design something on, you did see a lot of really great Flash websites. I remember one I went to the Majora's Mask promo website, and there was like a Flash ocarina that you could play. And so I played one of the songs from it, and it was like, you played a song. Here's a secret thing. And like, I wasn't trying to capture this secret. I just found it. That was fun. That website probably is gone now, as you know, Majora's Mask has been replaced with the new Super Mario Majora's Mask. But it was still good. One that I thought did it really well was Smash Dojo. This was for Smash Brothers Brawl. And they pretty much did the same thing for Smash 4, but with Dojo, I think it was once a week, maybe even less than that, the head developer would show you something new for the game. Sometimes it was reintroducing a character that has already been in it, and we're just showing you how things are different now. It would be a new reveal sometimes. Sometimes it would just be like a new Pokemon that comes out, just one. So it was like really big reveals, and then it was really small reveals that were so insignificant that it was kind of funny that he would take up a much anticipated announcement of some characters and just be like, here's, I don't know, the character's name, Bonnaroo, the little tree guy. Is everybody having a good time? And so I was like, oh, okay, you're messing with us, but okay. Mm-hmm. So that was great. But one of the best accessories to games, aside from the games, is the community. And the root word of accessory is access. Being involved in a game means opening up doors to different communities, being able to join forums and have a say in things, being able to play with other people, or if it's a multiplayer game, or be able to share videos of your experiences if it's a single player game, or both, if the game has both, or whatever variation of that is. But I mean, what could be better as a way of maintaining a player's interest in a game than avenues for the players to interact with each other? Being able to interact with the game, mods. The mods are the bread and butter of many games, and there are games that would be much more successful if modding was even more encouraged, or encouraged at all, and not completely copyright protected. Now, on the other hand, you have developers like Bethesda who are like, we know people are going to mod the shit out of the next Elder Scrolls game. Go for it. We'll probably hire a few people who've impressed us enough. How do you think we find the next developers for Elder Scrolls games? I don't know. Maybe people who are working on Elder Scrolls games right now. That's a good place to start.
The Skyrim on PC has a endorsed patch from Bethesda that HDifies everything and basically says, oh, you're on a PC and not a Xbox 360 or PS3, have some PC-worthy graphics.
Yeah.
It was done by the community, and Bethesda took a look and said, this is good, we're going to put this on the store page.
Yeah. There, at this point in time, Twilight Princess, Zelda, is being released as an HD. It hasn't come out yet, but...
How can they HDify? It was just last year. Never mind. Sorry.
No. How many examples can you give you of that?
Yeah.
But there is a fan-made HD update as well that's been in the works, and people are saying that the fan-made one is actually better. So that remains to be seen. You would want to try them out side by side, but that fan might be the kind of person that you need to work for your team, so that he can offer his insight, things like that. Okay, do you want to talk about another one? Because I got one on deck.
Okay, well, I'd like to just sort of briefly touch on one, and that is board games. Because lots of video games have spun off to various board game things. There's a StarCraft II Risk which, if you think about it, perfectly makes sense. StarCraft 2 is already a real-time strategy game, so turning it into a turn-based board game about strategy and conquering the galaxy.
In mass numbers, yeah.
Absolutely. I think there's also a Mass Effect Risk, but that one kind of confused me. It's also, you see everything skinned onto Monopoly. Street Fighter and Monopoly do not belong together. That's just silly.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Nintendo Monopoly is like you buy the individual characters. I'm like, this feels like prostitution. Oh, you landed on Zelda. Yeah, good for you. Well, it just so happens that I set up plenty of business and openings across the board.
Okay, that got wrong so quick. But
I'll let you move a space if you're more into Link. We'll just I have less hotels there, but you know.
There's you rarely see something that's truly original based on a game. It's you see a lot of reskinning of board games, Risk and Monopoly being.
Bioshock Infinite did one. It was part
there was a Battle for Columbia.
Yeah. I haven't played that one though, but
Assassin's Creed has attempted a few of those. The one I sort of really liked was they did a Portal board game. And what the designers pretty much looked at and says, like, okay, we can make a game where two people are racing each other through chambers or whatever, and they have to use portal guns. Or we can make a board game that exists in the universe of Aperture Science and just happens to have portal guns. Which is what they did. They built a game where you and everybody else are basically testers. You've got your little whoever you control, and you're trying to move this person around to get as much cake as possible. And it is literally called the uncooperative game of cake acquisition. But other testers are also trying to get their participants to do that stuff too, and chambers change around. And there is a portal gun you can use to basically instantly jump from one room to any other room you want. But it's not like everyone gets a portal gun and you get to use it once a turn or something like that. It's one of the many cards you have, and it really does capture a lot of the basic feel. Like you are playing one of the people outside, and then the little figurines represent the shells running around doing whatever the heck you say. So that is actually, I think, sort of the best example I've seen of a video game to board game.
And that's funny. Like, that is that is just funny. I mean, when you first said that, the first thing that popped in my mind was just like a Snakes and Ladders version of it. But instead of snakes, you fall through portals, and you have to physically move the piece through several times until somebody can close the portal. So you're actually stuck in a portal loop, and you just keep falling, and then somebody else has to open up a portal somewhere else.
Did you just blow a circuit?
I just invented an idea. Oh boy. Oh, I have too many of these. Oh, why can't I just... Well, I would love like a website that just lets you like pitch an idea and let other people bid on it.
Like Kickstarter?
That's not really bidding. Because I would want to sell the idea, not make the idea. Kickstarter is about making the idea and getting people to put money down on it. We're not going to criticize Kickstarter. I support crowdfunding. I use Patreon. Tiny Enemy Shrimp on Patreon. $1 a month.
Give him money.
Yeah, that's what I just said. Very quick aside. I decided that there are so many people who A, owe me money, or B, feel like they owe me something. Where if I just said, okay, sign up for Patreon, pay me $1. I'm never going to ask you for more than that. I am going to go for quantity over quality on this one. Because you can get 1,200 people to pay you $1, and you actually probably get more around 1,100 because Patreon needs its own cut. Point is, money is great. Next one that popped into my mind about the subject was the Street Pass of the Nintendo 3DS. A wonderful system that I really can't think of any major flaws other than at some point it may no longer do its thing. But I don't think that's the case with the Street Pass because the software and all the functionality is built into the games and the 3DS itself. So I guess if you don't have a 3DS and you never thought to pick one up, you're probably never going to. But the objective is a developer can put a feature into their game that when you pass by somebody else who also happens to have the same game, If your 3DSs are both in sleep mode, they pass by each other. A signal is sent. So you go, hey, and the other guy says, hey, and you get a bunch of their information. They get a bunch of your information. The more games you have, the more things that you get. It really it encouraged the sense of like downloading the games onto the system, because the more games you have on the system, the more things that you'll get through Street Pass. So the one thing that I never tested and that I don't think is true is if I'm getting Bravely Default Street Passes from my people who have Bravely Default, even if Bravely Default isn't the cartridge in my system at the moment. I don't think that's what's going on, but I wouldn't mind plugging that in to test it. But for where it does work, I have Smash for the 3DS installed on my system. I have Zelda installed on my system. And there's usually one game that's being rotated. And then there's also the Mia Plaza. And yeah, every time you pass by somebody, one person will go bing, 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 and just like give you new things for each of them. And this is a great way to add some sort of like multiplayer-esque addition to the game. In the Smash one, it's just like this thing where these little pogs knock each other off the board. It's not, I think if you were able to like send your amiibo information, you can fight other players' amiibo fighters through the Street Pass, that would be great. Maybe they do.
Wait,
that.
Are you saying like your amiibo fighter is in your system? You pass by other people's Smash Brothers and you open up your system and you see your amiibo fighter beat up this many other amiibo fighters and was beaten up by these ones?
Oh no, you physically fight the amiibo fighter. You get the information.
You physically... You realize I can just throw the amiibo fighter across the room. You said physically fight the amiibo fighter.
Okay, fine. Have that. Go ahead. Because that's contributing to the conversation. The one that I thought worked pretty well, that got me to continue playing. It gets me to continue playing A Link Between Worlds. Is that's what you get. Somebody else will send your link to the other person as a shadow link, and then that shadow link is waiting for you somewhere in the world. You go up to that person and you fight them. And the better that you are at the game, or the more shit you have, the harder that your shadow link is going to be to fight. It's a little limited. I mean, you only have 2 items, and the AI is only so far. It's not like you can like set different attack patterns and be really defensive, or always throw boomerangs or whatever. But it's still great to feel like that the games are still active worlds, and that there's still things that you can do within them. And once they move on to a new platform and they're going to stop developing games for them, I don't know where Street Pass will be into all of this. But as an additional feature, it wasn't what sold me on the 3DS, but sure as shit makes having it around a lot better, and it gives you something to talk about and gives you something to show other people, which will help sell them on it, which benefits you because then you have more people who are passing you.
Well, I do know there's also people who really like the puzzle pieces for something, the 3D artwork.
I didn't even talk about that, but that's when you don't even need a game for.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of inside things, and having passed by a whole bunch of people, you'll actually, have a whole lineup of these little Miis introducing themselves. I know one that I thought of, which kind of rubbed me both ways, like this is a good thing as a bad thing, was in Kirby Triple Deluxe. If you got Street Passed by other people, they would show up at certain points in the game and throw you an item, which would then be stored, and you could just use it whenever you want. If you don't do this, it's always Waddle Dee who throws it to you, or DDD's right-hand Waddle person, and it's always the small health item. But, having a small health item in your, just sitting down there that you can tap if you really need a boost is good. Mm-hmm. But some people you can pass by will actually give you a maximum tomato or stuff like that, depending how many you passed by, and it would be them in-game. And I'm not quite sure how I thought about that, because it basically meant by doing Street Pass, you've made this game a little bit easier, because now these other Miis are throwing you items.
Yeah, it does, that was the same thing with Bravely Default. I mean, you would pass by other players who had much higher level characters, and you would summon them, and they would do some incredible, 9999999 move and win you a fight. It is on the onus of the player, though. A, you can turn it off. B, just never use the item. C, don't ever leave the house with the 3DS and don't risk it at all, but that's...
I keep my 3DS Wi-Fi off. I don't need it. I don't feel these features are something I'm terribly interested in. I'm not going to begrudge their existence. It's just not for me. I bought a 3DS because I wanted to play games on the go. Yeah. That's all I wanted to do.
Yeah, I would say one way to look at it is, and we'll use Peripheral default for this one, is let's say your first run through, you're just doing it for the story and for the experience and for the joy of it, and you just went all out. Collect as many characters as you can, send everything, receive everything, just be completely nuts with it. And then another run, you do completely vanilla. So you don't take any street passes, you don't do anything, and you completely play the game on its own. It does change the experience so much that both playthroughs will be interesting in different ways, which is in its own way of improving longevity.
You heard of second default yet? Heard of second default yet?
You're Bravely Second.
Bravely Second?
Yeah, I know all about it.
Okay.
Has it come stateside yet?
No, but you can apparently order the Japanese one. Then I've always liked that the DS and 3DS have always been region free, because that, I think, opens up the ability to say, here's a game that never came out in English. You know what? I'll just look up a guide so I understand what they're saying, because I like it whatever.
Or just learn Japanese.
I
mean, you could.
Yeah, I could. I think if I were to learn Japanese, I'd much more likely learn the conversational one than the written one.
Okay, fair enough.
Alright, okay. But anyways, so I did touch on action figures. That's not one I can really bring up again. Soundtracks are a nice one. I think that kind of goes into the art book category, though.
But, yeah, I mean, that's not something that you really, like, improve interaction. That's just... The thing about games is that movies and that stuff, TV shows too, this visual medium is that there really is a tremendous amount of work that goes into it. The music, the art, the acting, performances, writing, all of that stuff. And I think it's great whenever you have access to all of that, to continue to appreciate it even after you're done playing the game. Like, I have some music on a playlist from House of the Dead Overkill, and oh god, the amount of music on that game was overkill. They Sega composed way more songs than it needed to, which is something that they do. Like they composed like 100 different songs for like F-Zero GX, and you'll pick up a few and you'll like them and you'll add them to your regular collection, regular music rotation. It's a little nostalgic, but it's also like, hey, if you think it's a good song, there you go.
Well, I mean, once upon a time, in order to make music for video games, the most they could ever do was just have 8 chords and do 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 do. And then when you actually hear the Tetris theme done on string instruments, perhaps with even an opera singer there or something like that, like, why would you want to go back? Like, I understand there's technological limitations, but when you actually hear music properly done, not just chip-tuned out by a synthesizer, like, I don't understand why people really like, the synthesizer chip tune. I made this in an afternoon in my basement with a randomization program, when you have games, like, you don't have to have a whole orchestra, but for fuck's sakes, use a real instrument.
I feel like I would have a better answer for you if I had some time to dwell on it, but right now I have to admit that nostalgia does inform a lot of that. Taking something and then making a minimalistic version of it. The soundtrack for like the original Streets of Rage was chip-tuned because it had to be, and it sounds great.
Well, yeah, there were technological limitations at the time,
but they knew how to use those limitations. They knew how to make it work. There probably has been better remixes of it. It's something that I hate to admit, but yeah, I mean, an orchestrated version of the Tetris song versus the basic one is objectively better. It's difficult to argue that, but it's taste. Somebody just if it makes them feel a certain way and they enjoy listening to it, that's as far as it gets. Is there a scientific reason why? I'd say it might boil down to humanity's need to simplify things. One guy, I think his name was Michael Thompson, he wrote about the difference between the Mario music in like the original NES ones versus Mario music that's composed for, say, Mario Galaxy. And he noted that the older the music was, the easier it was to recall and even replicate. So whenever somebody would remember a Mario song from the newer ones, the song ended up taking a lot of those qualities. And those qualities only existed because there was these limitations. You could only compose the music in a certain way, and that informed what kind of music you were making, and it informed what kind of game you were making too. Because the game also had its own set of limitations. That's not the reason why though, but the reason why is that, yeah, if you wanted to retain something, it is easier, because your brain that's what it's doing, it's storing information, it's storing data. It is easier to retain and even hear in your head something that has been deconstructed, made simpler. It's the same reason why it's easier to picture a cartoon character in your head than a person. I mean, I can see you clearly in my head because I've seen your face like 100 times, 200 times. So when I can close my eyes and I can see you, but it takes more processing power. It is more difficult to render a three-dimensional object in my head than to have like a little cartoon picture of you with your eyes and your mustache and your smile. I can see that way easier in my head. Way easier. It is less taxing. The better music, the better payoff. But there is a place for simplicity. Absolutely.
Wow. Okay, so is it your turn?
It just so happened that I was thinking about this not too long ago. So.
Okay. Well, I was gonna say it's your turn, but I think you probably need a break for the voice for a bit.
Where are we at, by the way? We're at 42 minutes.
Okay. Well, I would like to just bring up one last one, if I may. Books. There, you'll definitely see a lot of. These days, you'll see a lot of books that take place in video game universes. One of the big things in Guild Wars 2 is that there was this team called Destiny's Edge. And for most of the plot, you really feel like you're kind of a tag-along with them. Like, oh, Destiny's Edge is reforming because we did all these amazing things, but then we disbanded. But now we're coming back together. It's actually why I really like the Heart of Thorns update, because towards, like, when they were doing the new chapters, they really were starting to flesh out your character out as somebody who's actually important in this universe.
Yeah.
And then Heart of Thorns, like, you'll have your character actually giving orders, making conclusions and talking a lot in cutscenes, and it just makes you feel like you're more important. But part of what made Destiny's Edge famous is there was one great plan which didn't end very well. And before Guild Wars 2 came out, there was a book that basically outlined who these characters were, and this one grand incident which caused Destiny's Edge to disband. And it was not very well written. There's a certain point where, like, fan fiction is always associated as this unprofessional, thing written by some fans who happen to like the characters and want these male characters to kiss each other.
For the most part, it's what they see in their head anyways. So the fact that they wrote it down just makes it better for them.
Yeah, and I feel, especially when you're talking about specific characters, it's very hard to do novelizations of them. I read some stuff from the Black Library occasionally, and one of the biggest things that the Tau have an issue with is that their heroes are very much elevated and, made famous. If you look at the Space Marines, whenever you have the Space Marines, you pretty much have to invent them yourselves and then write them and put them together. Same thing with, I guess, the Inquisition. No one really writes the Black Library from the perspective of aliens, really. But they're not... Again, the Tau have very specific heroes who are in the Codex, who are hero characters. Like, if you look at the Space Marine Codex, this is a Space Marine Commander. This is a Space Marine Lieutenant. These are their stats. If you look in the Tau Codex, this is Shadow Sun. These are her stats. This is how she became famous, or as a renowned warrior. Mm-hmm. So that's always difficult when they're trying to write stories involving Tau, because you pretty much just see Shadow Sun, Shadow Sun, Shadow Sun, Shadow Sun, and occasionally guy whose name I'm going to remember after this episode with the sword. Like, these are the ones who are...
Oh, Link. Sorry.
Link in a power armor, in a power mech, maybe. But you always hear about these characters... The Space Marine books, they invent their characters, and thus they can do whatever they want to them. But when you have 5 different authors, all with 5 different takes on Shadow Sun, not all of which seem to really reminisce with the Codex, that starts getting a little weird.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, the strongest ones have always been I'm going to invent this commander and this commander and this Magnos and this whatever as, sort of a team that's going to do something in the book, or just, paying homage more to the universe. Whenever you have these books really try to hone in on specific characters, it's never really the same writer as the original source material. Whoever wrote the Codex or the Tau book is most likely not writing books about Shadow Sun.
Yeah, one of the it's a very difficult challenge, but it's one of the most interesting things is to see how well one writer can take the voice of another established written work. It's also tricky too because one of the philosophies that I've stuck to is that games aren't trying to, well, some of them are, but many games are trying not to say this is taking place in a real world setting and this just so happens to be something that you can interact with. Games are content with admitting on some level that they are games and that everyone is playing along because games are fun, and fun is, well, one of the best things about living. Like Metal Gear Solid was an eye-opener for a lot of people because we have Solid Snake who completely commits to whatever is going on, and the colonel says, try plugging the controller out of slot 1 and putting it into slot 2. That should mess up Psycho Mantis. And if somebody told me that I can fix something by plugging one controller into another, I would either lose my mind because reality has broken as I know it, or be completely on board with it. And Snake is like, okay, I'll do it, and because you're Snake, you're Snake in the game. It's like, okay, all right, I'm in control of 2. What now, Colonel? Because like, well, is Psycho Mantis still controlling your thoughts? No, he's not, Colonel. Okay, great. Okay, if it does it again, just move the controller to the next port. I only have 2 ports. You need to buy the 4-port accessory. Don't you have any friends, Snake? Don't you have 3 people that come over to play games, Snake? No, if my friends come over, we're just gonna pull out the N64 because that has 4 ports built in, and we're gonna play Smash Brothers. I'd love to be a Smash character.
You should totally just take the images, and you could probably just create that whole conversation if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But the difficulty again with the books is that the best option is really to pay homage to the universe it takes place in. Because whenever you try to take existing characters, like there's a whole bunch of ones for StarCraft. Whenever you try to
I read a few for Diablo. There was one that was based around Bartok the Bloody, who you would only know in Diablo 2 because he had a set, or I think it was like a one weapon, like Bartok's Cutthroat, something like that. Mm. I think the smaller the impact that whatever it is had on, say, the main game, the more creative liberty you could take without breaking something. So you can write a whole story about Bartok the Bloody, and even if it was a terrible story, no one's going to give a crap in the grander scheme of things because, again, it's just this one character's item of like 200 items, 200 unique items from different names all over. But it's also great because Diablo left all that open to interpretation. Here's what we have that you're not going to adjust because we are right, and here's a whole bunch of things you can do whatever you want with.
Yeah, and it's always tricky though because a lot of times, especially when it comes to promoting video games, like StarCraft 2 is about to come out. We want to release some books that have Jim Raynor in it, and they don't really. I don't think a lot of effort is put into them. It's just here's promotional material. You like to read, here's a book. You don't like to read, we'll recycle them afterwards.
Yeah, it's just too bad how difficult it is to make movies at the standard of quality that you expect from Blizzard because their CG cutscenes have always been incredible. Mm. But like, there's like a whole bunch of spin-off Resident Evil movies starring Leon Kennedy that are entertaining, but not by any means groundbreaking or magnificent. They're just like Adventures of Leon. It fills space, and I'm like, I'm okay with this.
I've only ever seen one of them, and right off the bat, that is not how the fucking G virus works, you idiot!
I'm sorry to hear that. I didn't.
Did you even play any of the games? Did you understand it? Like, no one is going to. Also, you're violating the laws of physics in several ways. But it's a 3D movie. We're not going to get too hung up on that one.
Yeah, it's fine with that.
Yeah.
Alright, all you need to pee, but if you want to close this out.
Well, everything, it's no longer an isolated thing anymore. Once upon a time, video games were a very small thing, and I think the biggest, real-world interaction where you could get patches, like you could send in the code because you beat whatever high-score game, they send you a patch, so that's pretty cool, and that, I wouldn't mind having that come back. But it's now extended to a lot of other mediums. Social media is a huge thing, so remember when they're doing the new version of the Tribes game, they were quite literally holding all their concept art and news hostage for Facebook likes. You had to certain
You had a certain amount of likes, yeah.
Yeah, that was fucking stupid. But it's turned into a whole grand thing. It's not just a video game anymore. Like, here's the new Assassin's Creed, and here's several figurines, and and you can buy replicants of various weapons from the game, like the gauntlet and the sword cane.
Yeah.
And you can, some of the stuff will come with codes so that you can get cosmetic stuff in game, and it's all. Like, the AAA industry isn't just selling you a game anymore. They're selling you an experience.
I love it when you do that.
But
you've done that before.
I have. But
But that's kind of the gist of all of this, isn't it? I mean, it's choosing what you want to experience in your daily experience. How much of that do you want to devote to something that you care about?
It can be done very badly, though. It's like holding off decent amount of content unless you get something that doesn't relate to it is not good. Making your game easier by selling you an app that allows you to play a mini game that gives you items for the main game is getting pretty silly. It's going back to the whole thing of you want to buy a game and get the game for the price of a game.
Yeah.
And yes, we get the free to play is a huge thing, cosmetic items are never going away, and people, companies want to sell you more to make more, and we can't fight any of that regrettably, but it can be done right, it can be done badly, and I think the best example, most common example of this stuff is always going to be collector's editions. Like you said, you got the art book with yours, and there's been lots of other fun ones where you can get figurines. I bought the collector's edition for the new Guilty Gear game. It came in a box that looked like a book from the game. It had the soundtrack, it had a little keychain, look at the belt clip, and it had a book that had bios for all the characters, including, here's this character who's not in the game. We're going to give you no explanation for that whatsoever. Here's another character. They're not in this game. We're not going to tell you what the fuck they're up to.
Yeah.
It was a little silly and stuff. But, yeah, I'd also want to say, just on the topic of Collector's Edition, best Collector's Edition ever was done by Fantasy Flight for the role-playing game Rogue Trader that takes place in the universe of Warhammer 40k. And it came with a certificate that basically stated that you have been, approved as a rogue trader. You will be given your own ship, and by the laws of Imperium, may act in the best interests of the Imperium within the space. You have the rights to do many things, which most citizens don't, and again, you own a ship, which in the Warhammer 40k universe is a pretty fucking big thing.
Yeah.
This certificate does not affect the game at all. It's not an in-game item. It's not a whatever. Like, obviously, I'm drawing parallels between tabletop role-playing games and video games, but it doesn't affect the game at all. But god damn it, you could put it in a frame, put it on your wall, and say, there's my certificate of ownership for the Lemonic Wake. Yeah. That is my ship in the port, and this thing proves I own it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I have shit on my wall, too. Not that, but other things.
Yeah, like
and
that.
My wall is just getting more filled with it.
Yeah.
Alright. I gotta go pee.
Okay.
Thanks for watching. Or listening, if you're not sitting here watching. Whatever. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, sign off.